All right. At the beginning of this case, we need to, of each case, we have to figure out which course of action we take. Do we take a pure default where the other side is not responding? Do we take a default with agreement, meaning the other side is not paying the fee to respond, the $435 right now, and then we have an agreement? Or do we have the other side, you file, the other side responds, and we have an agreement? So in order to know what we need for each case, so you know which videos to watch going forward, let's look at the form that we attach as a checklist to the judgment, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, looking at my screen, now you can see this is the judgment checklist 182, which will be attached to your package. This judgment checklist is a list of documents that a court may require to complete a default or uncontested, which is the only two options we have. So we have to always attach. The checklist may be filed along with your judgment, but is not required. I would always do that and check off on the left side so the clerk can check off on the right side. If the forms or other documents have already been filed, you should check the boxes indicating that they have been previously filed. Unless listed otherwise on this form, when you file the document with the court, you should submit an original and 2 copies. Okay, so one is copy for you, one for the party, and the one for the judgment. And here's the summary of everything. So default with no agreement is number 1. So proof of service. Proof of service is a document that shows that we served the petition, summons, and ADR form. Second, request to enter default. That form we're going to fill out. Petitioner's declaration regarding service of disclosure. So this is where we show that we serve the other side our financial disclosures, which is FL 150 and 142. This is absolutely necessary, which you will notice that we don't need it from respondent. So if it's a default without an agreement, we don't need financial disclosures from the other side. Then declaration for default, it's a form, a judgment with 5 copies, another notice of entry of judgment, and 2 stamped envelopes. And then if there are minor children, then we have all these other forms that we will go over. So FL 105 is always attached to FL 100, to the original petition and summons. Petitioner's income and expense declaration. It has to be filed because for child support purposes, and financial statements simplified FL 155. Computer printout of guideline child support, optional, great, we can skip that. Notice of rights of responsibilities may be attached by petitioner or by the court, form 192. I always do attach that because they bounce it. Child support order stipulation to establish a modified child support order. FL 350, child support information and order attachment, FL 342. And it says or. So you see or. I never file these forms. So what I do, I check it here, written agreement. But since this one, if you go up, we have no response and no agreement. So we might have to do the forms. And then this is optional, income withholding for support and child custody and visitation parenting time, or other proposed written order containing the information attached to judgment. So here it says or this can be attached to the judgment. I actually never filed this form. So anyway, if spousal support, then we have this declaration, income and expense declaration, or attached to the judgment. So if assets that need to be divided, then we have declarations that we attach. I usually in a default attach this to FL 100 and then again to the judgment. So it matches. Property order attachment to the judgment or proposed written order. So we can attach just the form. If attorney's fees and costs are requested, then request for attorney's fee form and the other form. So in typical default case, people don't want anything. So only number 1, A, B, 2G applies. Everything else is only if you have a child, only if you need spousal support. But usually in a default, I never seen in 12 years asking for spousal support on the default. Probably not going to get it because the judge cannot order default on spousal support if there is no income declaration from the other side. So it seems completely not realistic. Okay, second is default was an agreement. So the only difference is going to be that we have petitioner's declaration of regarding disclosure like above. Then here's the difference. Petitioner's declaration regarding service of declaration, meaning this is that we prove that we serve PDD the other side, final, or, and this is what I always do in amicable cases, stipulation and waive final. So basically you have to disclose your assets twice because divorce is going on for years. Sometimes you have your initial preliminary declaration of disclosures, which is income and expense declaration and assets in debt form, and then final, like 6 months, 8 months later. So we waive that. And then it says, or separately filed waiver included in the written agreement. I don't do separately filed waiver because clerks like this form. So it's easier to check off. So as you can see here, default does not require preliminary declaration of disclosure from the other side either. So we have only petitioners. The only difference is going to be here in uncontested, where we have to have bolded both from petitioner and respondent. So, and the reason I like uncontested cases because then the petitioner cannot say, oh gosh, if I knew that you have so much money, I would never have filed for default. Now I need to set it aside. And you only have 6 months until you once you find out, you have to file it within 6 months from the moment you found out, unless there is fraud. But how can it be fraud if the other side is not even required to produce it? So basically, the ideal case I go for is petition, response is being filed, we exchange preliminary declaration of disclosures, and then we have an agreement, judgment, done. This is my ideal case. And courts usually accept those type of cases much more readily, easily than any other cases. But for the purpose of this course, I will go through every single option preparing the judgment. So stay tuned in the next video.